Nope. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Astotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Astotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to the Assam devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 22nd day of March 2023 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Okay. 29? 29. Is it? Okay, for sure. Okay. And we're reading chapter 13, Nature of the Enjoyer in Consciousness, page 560, text 29. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Na Hinasti Atmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahanastyaatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahanastyaatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Page 560. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahanastyaatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Go ahead, Vrindavan. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahainastyatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Page 560. Bhushan, you got it? Okay, you can start. Go ahead.
Verse 29.
Yeah. Okay.
Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra
Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra
Samavastitam Ishwaram
Samavastitam Ishwaram
Nahi Hinaste Atmanamanam
Nahanastyaatmanatmanam
Tato Yati Param Gatim.
Tato Yati Param Gatim. Bhushan, you got it? Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahainastyatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Brajamandala. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahainastyatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahainastyatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Samam Pashyan Hi Sarvatra Samavastitam Ishwaram Nahainastyatmanatmanam Tato Yati Param Gatim. Samam equally, Pashyan seeing, he certainly, Sarvatra everywhere. Samavastitam equally situated, Ishwaram the super soul, na does not, hinasti degrade, atmana by the mind, atmanam the soul, tataha then, yati reaches, param the transcendental, gatim destination. Translation: one who sees the super soul equally present everywhere, in every living being, does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. Purport: the living entity, by accepting his material existence, has become situated differently than in his spiritual existence. But if one understands that the Supreme is situated in his Paramatma manifestation everywhere, That is, if one can see the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in every living thing, he does not degrade himself by a destructive mentality, and he therefore gradually advances to the spiritual world. The mind is generally addicted to sense gratification processes, but when the mind turns to the Supersoul, one becomes advanced in spiritual understanding. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one note on this translation. It's just a fact that Prabhupada would often use the word approach to mean reach. And that's what it means here, and that's what he gave the synonym in the word-by-word meanings. Yati, reaches. Because approaches mean, well, he approaches, but you don't quite make it. But actually, approaches here means he reaches. So what is this? This is a seeing. A lot of in the Bhagavad Gita as well as the Bhagavatam, we find that advancement in Krishna consciousness or in spiritual realization is mentioned in terms of seeing, of purifying one's vision. Just the idea of the beginning of Krishna consciousness, the beginning of spiritual realization, is understanding you're not the body. And it means that you see yourself differently. You have a different conception of who you are and what you are. And not only yourself, but everybody. And this seeing of the Supersoul, I guess it includes seeing the soul, because wherever the Supersoul is in the body, there's a soul there. I mean, that's from the beginning of this chapter. If one can see the world in terms of what we've learned in this chapter, then you'll see the Chaitra. Of course, you'll see the body, but you'll also see the Chaitra Gya, the knower of the body, and then you realize, yes, there's two knowers, and so the soul and the Supersoul is there. And for those who are trying to spread Krishna consciousness and convince someone to become interested in Krishna consciousness preliminarily or whatever, to take the first step, it helps to understand that you're being inspired by the Supersoul to say things, and that the Supersoul in that person's body can also inspire them to be receptive. In other words, that's part of what devotional service is about, is becoming Krishna conscious, which means seeing yourself, seeing the world through the eyes of Shastra, that famous phrase, Shastra Chakshus. And then seeing the benefit of that, and how important it is that for every living being, especially human beings who have a chance to apply their intelligence, to wake up. Wake up. It's like, as Bhaktivinoda says in the song, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. Gaurachanda is calling us, the Lord Chaitanya, wake up, sleeping soul. You've been sleeping in the lap of the witch Maya for so long. And you don't deserve to be there. You can, your real benefit in life is understanding yourself in terms of what is revealed in the scripture and what we get here. So, by seeing the Supersoul everywhere, this is a form of God realization. A lot of that is you find in the second canto, the first step in God realization. And that has to do with the external, the Vishvarup, the universal form. It just means seeing what you always see, but seeing it with a different understanding. I sometimes give the example, forgive me, from my own life. Way back when I was growing up, in Long Island, we used to go into the city to the museums. There's some wonderful museums in New York, And I would look, and there's a Rembrandt, and there's a Picasso, and there's, this one and that one. I wouldn't really know very much, but they were far out, interesting. But later on, I became curious to really learn a little bit more about the fine art. And so my parents brought me this series of books, hardback books with nice big color illustrations and everything. And gradually I learned more about the different styles that developed over the years, Renaissance style, medieval style, and what the different symbols in the pictures meant. And so when I went to the museums then, I saw differently. I saw with the eyes of knowledge. And we can even see it here. Here we have all this art on the wall. Someone wanders into the temple for the first time without knowing anything, and they don't really know what to make of it. It's obviously pretty expert art, but I don't know who the figures are or what's going on. But if a devotee sees, Lord Chaitanya dancing like that, I'm telling you, Prabhupada, he would see even these crude paintings that they first started to see. He would see them as windows to the spiritual world. He himself was somewhat of an artist. I don't know if you know that. And he so much appreciated that the early efforts of his artists to, depict especially the pastimes in Krishna book and the first canto and so forth. And so that's seeing with spiritual eyes, actually seeing the pastime. It's like I have a book at home. Anyone is welcome to just write to me. I'll send it to you. It's on my hard drive. It's called Leela Chanda, or Ashtadasa Chanda. And it's 18 verses, but that's a little misleading because some of these verses are like 30, 40, 50 lines long. Summary of Krishna's Vrindavan Leela. And, like in the Bhagavatam, you'll find the pastime of Krishna kicking over the cart, And it's a whole little chapter there, or half a chapter anyway. I think Trinavarta is also in the same chapter. But it's a good number of verses, and in English it expands because Sanskrit is so concise. But here, in this work of literature that Rupa Goswami wrote, it's only like 3 or 4 verses. They're really nice verses. Outdanika mahasang kulitam bikashakadadas tanasayanalam bakakuchadata Krishna vidichitadodana chanchada patikutta shakada vinodana. And that summarizes in the Uttana ceremony. It's such a wonderful culture. Uttana ceremony. When a little baby is born, they just lie on the back, right? To help us. But then after some time, I don't know how many months, they turn over on their stomach, and they're ready to move, right? To crawl. I don't know personally for this, but so there's a whole ceremony for that in the Vedic culture. So that's the Uttana ceremony. And so Mother Yashoda, she invited her friends, and Prabhupada says in the Krishna book, men and women coming. And so she put them down, to put them down to rest in a little, what we would call a cradle, underneath this cart, which was a sturdy thing, would be a nice place for them to be protected. Unfortunately, there's a demon ghost that has inhabited that, this is Shakata Asra. Shakata means cart. So then it describes how, he was crying for his mother's breast, but she couldn't hear him because of all the noise. So he became frustrated and started kicking his legs. He knew the demon was in there, so he hits the axle and the whole thing crashes down, And Manda Maharaj ran, all the men ran, and it said there were these little children who were assigned to play with Krishna, basically to watch him, a little older, they're like 3 or 4 years old, and he's, 2 months. And so anyway, so they insisted, yeah, Krishna moves his foot, and it knocked out the whole thing. And so they said, we can't believe these children, they didn't really know. So anyway, in 2 or 3 verses, the whole pastime is outlined, just to be reminding you. So the idea is that, Hare Krishna, welcome. So if you'd like to, we're having a little class on Bhagavad Gita. The darshan won't be until 8:15. So if you want to come back, if you want we can give you a book, and you can sit down here or pull. There's more cushions under there. Is it okay? And we're on page 560. So anyway, the idea is that you've already read this pastime so many times. So you read this little summary, and the whole thing comes to you. The details of it. Whereas the person who just reads that, well, that's interesting, but it's pretty terse, you don't get many details. So this is the idea, is that by reading the Bhagavad Gita and understanding the science of the soul and the super soul, which we've learned in this chapter, it's explained very systematically, then when you, if you're open to it, if you're simply in the, cultivating the mode of passion and ignorance, and you're studying the Bhagavad Gita to pass a test in a course, not to really become enlightened, then the chances are you're not going to, even though it says here, oh, this is great, tato yati param gatim, but I don't think I can do it. You're not going to be able to see the super soul everywhere. But if you want to, if you're open to it, then you can see that everyone is getting information from the super soul. Krishna is guiding, and you understand their destiny is being played out in front of us. The super soul is inspiring you, and even the animals. They say, oh, he's just doing this by instinct. Animals work by instinct. They have intelligence, rudimentary intelligence, which is being informed by the super soul to tell them to do this, go this, fly this way, and everything. Where else is it coming from? So this is quite a vision. It's another way of perceiving God and everything. We have the first step in God realization. Whatever we see, the earth, the water, fire, air, ether, the light of the sun, the ability in man, all these things mentioned in the 7th chapter. Krishna says, "I am that." Well, how is he that? Well, he is the one who created the sun and provides the energy of the sun. He is the one who we have emanated from, a part and parcel of Krishna. Right? So we ourselves are connected to God, and all of our senses and the form that we have is given by Him for a certain purpose, which is to cultivate Krishna consciousness and come back to Godhead. So if you understand that and you're seeing the world in that way, then that's a way of perceiving the hand of God in everything, Krishna's presence everywhere. So this is Krishna says, if you can do that, then you're going to go back to Godhead. Tato yati param gatim means you go to the transcendental destination. So it's worthwhile cultivating that vision and dealing with people on the basis of the fact, every body is a temple of God. Isn't it? Isn't that why you put tilak on? To recognize? It's a fact. God is there in everyone. And the human form is especially blessed because we have facility to understand and to mold our life in such a way that we become more and more God conscious progressively, and at the end of life we remember Krishna, remember Narayan. This is spoken Shukadeva Goswami. Now the Bhagavatam, it's interesting, the whole first canto is kind of an introduction. How did the Bhagavatam come to be written? There are many important instructions there, but the Bhagavatam really commences in terms of Shukadeva Goswami speaking to Parikshit at the beginning of the second canto. Right? It even has Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. The book starts again in a sense, right? So before you get too far into the book, Shukadeva Goswami is telling you the ultimate purpose of life. he says, Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari Shrotavya Krititavyascha Smartavya Chechitabayam. Because Parikshit asked a question that we should all ask. How can we face death without any fear? What should we think of? What should we do as death approaches? And death is approaching for all of us. We may not know when exactly it is, but it's coming for sure. So this is an all-important question. Shukadeva, he praises the question. He says, Vadiyana shite prashna krito loka hitam nipa atmavit samatak pungsa shoti vyadasha yakparaha. Wonderful question. That all the scholars, they praise this question because the answer is beneficial for the speaker, the hearer, and those who are listening in. But then he says, but it's rare to have this question. Shrota vyadini rajendra ninang sandita hashata apashyatam atmatattam griheshu gruhamedina. Those who have no vision, back to the vision of the self, who are blind to the self and just ordinary materialists, they have millions of subject matters for hearing. You don't believe it? Just search for anything on Google and you'll get like 10 million hits, right? That means it's a million different things, even more than before. So there's no question of that. And then he just describes in a few verses materialistic life, which doesn't help us. It keeps us bound to ignorance and so forth. But then he says, therefore, King Parikshit, who's the hearer of the Bhagavatam, if you want to be fearless at the time of death, and that is a fearful time. In my work as a year-long stint in the hospital, I was an inhalation therapist. I saw so many people pass away, and it's they're very terrified, and mostly they just sedate them. They're sedated, they're not conscious, which is like the worst thing. But anyway, so it's a fearful thing to contemplate. So here's it, how can you be fearless? Well, first of all, if you're completely convinced that you're not the body, that you're not going to really die, and that your next destination is either going back to Godhead or taking the next step into a pious family, the family of devotees. Krishna promises several places in the Gita. In other words, it's not the end of the world. Most people think, oh, it's the end of the world. I'm going to cease to exist. But you're not going to cease to exist. So he says, here's the formula. Tasmat Bharata, O descendant of Bharat. Sarvatma, Bhagavad Gita. He gives four definitions of the Supreme Person. The Supreme Soul, which we've just been reading, the Super Soul, Sarvatma, Bhagavan, the Supreme Person of our God, Ishvara, the Supreme Controller, and Hari, He who takes away all your suffering. It takes away your heart, steals your heart too. So what should you do? Shrotavya, hear about him. Kirtana, chant about him. Tirtitavya, smartavya, and remember. The first three processes of the 9. Hearing, chanting, remembering. Cha ichita abhayam, for those who want fearlessness at that time. You see? And then he gives a verse that begins with the word etavan. Now I noticed long ago that in the Bhagavatam periodically there are verses that begin with that word, and they're almost always like summary verses that are memorable. And this one is very memorable. He says, Etavad Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Padinishtaya Janmalabhak Parak Pungsam Ante Narayana Smritihi. And that last line is a phrase that we learned early on in the ashram. It simply means remembering Krishna at the time of death. Narayan at the time, Ante at the end, remembering Krishna. Whatever you do in terms of your Sankhya, yoga, it says, Etavan Sankhya, yoga or yoga of any kind, or Swadharma, your activities in Varnashram Dharma. The perfection of that will be if you can remember Narayan or Krishna at the time of death, when you're leaving. Ante means at the end. So that's the whole ball game. That's what we're aiming for. To cultivate Krishna consciousness means the full-time devotees, that everything we do is connected to Krishna. Prabhupada said, he set up the society that way, that you'll have things to do all day that will keep you Krishna conscious. And somehow you keep body and soul together. You go out and sell a few back to Godheads or whatever. And they were always, Krishna provides. So that we're eating, okay, then there's a way of eating. You cook the food with Krishna in mind, he's going to eat it, you offer to him. Then it becomes a sacrament. It's not just a bodily affair. And everything, the whole science of bhakti is to arrange your life that way, so that you're progressively remembering more and more, and you're also developing your original relationship, reviving your original relationship with Krishna on the spiritual level. So this is a wonderful verse where Krishna says he's giving a blessing here. Those who can see the super soul everywhere, right? Samam pashyani sarva samavastitam ishwaram nahinastya-atmanatmanam. Nahinas means they're not destroyed. Does not degrade himself, hinasti, by the mind. Very instructive. Because the mind, we're carrying this mind, and we learned in the 6th chapter, the mind can be the best friend or the worst enemy. The mind filled with all kinds of material desires and fears and grievances and a million different things like that. These are all called the badras. These are inauspicious things in the heart and the mind. Then that mind is your worst enemy. You think it's you're not the mind. But that mind is dragging the soul into the lower modes of nature, and ultimately even out of the human form of life. And people don't know that, Oh, you get addictions. You get addicted to some video game, And they're so skilled, they make them more and more with higher technology. And what do they have? The virtual reality. It's impossible. I read this some time ago, how in places like South Korea, Japan, they have much cheaper and faster internet, I've heard. Yeah. Right? And so that isn't even in India too. Oh, great. So So that means that the video games, and that you can have video games with people hundreds of thousands of miles away, right? You have a whole thing going on. And so they become more and more enthralling and more, and you identify with your avatar. Isn't that what they call them? That's who you are, right? In the game, you have big muscles, you're invincible, you're wielding all these weapons. And who wouldn't want to play, until you drop? So this poor guy, I read, and it didn't happen just once. He's playing and playing and playing and playing. Young guy, not some old guy. And he expires right there. Maybe he had some disease or he just stopped eating.
It actually teaches that you're not this body when you do that.
Yeah, if you could just dovetail that understanding into what you should do is not this body, not that you should be, whoever you wish to be. That's not going to work. So, that's horrific. What happens to that soul then? The world you're playing in is imaginary. Who knows what happens? So, and it's all the mind. So controlling the mind is basically what yoga is all about, right? In the 6th chapter. But it's not just controlling the mind by force and looking at some, mandala, meaningless thing on the wall. It's controlling the mind by turning one's attention to Krishna basically through sound. That sound, Krishna appears in this world, especially in this age, in the form of sound in His holy name, right? If you allow me just an interlude here, this wonderful poem about the holy name called the Kevalashtaka. Kevalashtaka. Actually, we learned within the last couple of years that there's actually 100 verses to this, and there were 8 of them pulled out as the Kevalashtaka. Probably, but not 100% sure, by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. This was written by a contemporary of Bhaktivinoda Thakur called Nilakanta Goswami, who wasn't a disciple, but he was a contemporary. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur praised it in one of his writings, this Kevalashtaka. So, this is Maduram Madurebhyopi, Mangalebhyopi Mangalam, Pavanam Pavanebhyopi, Hare Namaiva Kevalam. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of things that purify, it purifies most powerfully. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Now, I'm just going to interrupt a little bit. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Now, he's not lying. It's not like he's tasting it. He's tasting it, and you find great devotees like Haridas Thakur and of course Lord Chaitanya. They didn't want to stop chanting, because they're tasting the sweetness of the holy name. This comes up in the Nectar of Instruction, that because of our cultivation of the modes of passion and ignorance for so long, we can't taste the name for what it is. We don't see the form, and everything about bhakti is so sweet and enthralling and enchanting. But we don't taste it in its full form because of the covering of ignorance, So purification, Cheto Darpanamarjanam. By purifying the heart, it becomes sweeter and sweeter, more and more ruchi. So that's the first thing. And not only is it sweet, it's very because it's Krishna. Binnatvan Namanamino. Krishna has infused all of his energies in his holy name, which is like miraculous. But those who actually, suspend their disbelief and practice seriously the chanting, begin to experience some of that, the first steps. And that should deepen our faith so that, yes, it really is that way. And we're reading about it, yes, I can get that. So that's the first. It's very sweet and very purifying. Purifying of what? All of the eons of karma and these abhadras in the heart, lust, anger, greed, illusion, purifying. And auspicious, makes the life auspicious. So that's the first verse. Then the next verse is, brahmastambhaparyantam sarvam mayamayam jagat satyam satyam punak satyam hare namaiva kevalam. From Brahma's realm atop the sky down to the lowly grass, illusion reigns in Maya Devi's treacherous morass. The truth, the only truth, the name of Shri Hari, the holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. And then he says, he's the guru, he's the father, he's the friend most true. And she's the real mother who most kindly teaches you to always chant and hear the holy name of Shri Hari. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Now this next one is my favorite. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. Like Kanai Balai over there. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. Lord Shri Hari forever dwells wherever devotees whose hearts are fixed on him and free of all impurities uplift their voices high and sing his name in ecstasy. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. And then he says, alas, what sorrow, what great pain, the worst calamity for people to forget the holy name of Shri Hari. Although the name's a priceless gem, mere broken glass they see. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So then he says, just fill your ears, just fill them with the name of Shri Hari. Just chant the name with all sincerity. Just sing the name, just sing the holy name eternally. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. And then, the last verse. It makes this world appear like bits of straw upon the ground. Resplendently it reigns supreme, divinity and sound. It's filled with transcendental bliss and peerless purity. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So I added a 9th verse. At first we didn't know who the author was, but it was amazing because his name fit right into the poem. So anyway. Inspired to glorify the holy name of Shri Hari, Shri Nilakanta wrote this hymn in Sanskrit poetry. I pray that those who hear this lowly version made by me will chant the holy name of Shri Hari in ecstasy. So, this is just, my little attempt at putting it in English, but he's actually experiencing these things. This is not a big con. Somebody try to sell you something that is not really what it's touted up to be. These poems and these statements are all written by people who are realizing them. That's the point. So this should infuse some faith in us. Oh, I really want to taste it. So let me try to give up the offenses and inattention and get serious about chanting, so I can taste that sweetness. Just imagine what that means. If you have a way. And all the figures in these Chaitanya Charitamrita, they have reached this state where you can just experience the highest bliss just by you're not spending any money. It's good if you're with someone else, but you could be on your own, for hours, but you're not on your own. You're with Krishna, and He's reciprocating with His holy name. And what does it do? It completely kills any desire for Maya. Bhakti padeshan ubhavo virakta anyat chaisha trika eka kala. This is a verse of the 11th canto, Prabhupada quote all the time. The first line says, Bhakti pada isha. That's the first phrase. It says, Bhakti padeshan ubhavo means you're experiencing the Supreme Lord at every moment. You're actually experiencing His presence, which is what this verse is about. Virakti ranyata cha, and therefore you're indifferent. You have virakti, vairagya for anything else material. There's no temptation. There's no distraction. So bhakti pada isha, bhakti pareshanubhavo virakti anyata chaisha trika eka kala. So this the first thing is bhakti, is the attraction for the Lord. The love for the Lord is there. The experience of Krishna everywhere. And then the third thing, complete detachment from everything else. These occur simultaneously for one who is utterly surrendered to the Lord. Papadyamanasya, yatasha tushti pushti chadapayo nagasa. He compares it to, I always compare it to sitting down to a wonderful feast, the Sringadev feast, which always comes late, So all day you've been fasting, and the cooks have been working. And so then it comes time, it's usually 8:30, something. And because it's in the late spring, and therefore the dusk comes a little bit late. Anyway, so then tushti pushti chadapaya. So with every bite, you're experiencing a pleasure. The feast is wonderfully, you're very hungry, and the feast is wonderfully prepared, so everything is tasting so wonderful. That's tushti. Pushti, you're also being nourished at the same time. And as you continue to eat, you're becoming detached because you're becoming full. So the detachment is there. So similarly, by the practice of bhakti yoga, you become, your soul is nourished. You feel fulfilled. You don't feel oh, God, now I've got so many things I have to do in order to achieve this, achieve that, achieve. You feel satisfied with your life, even if it's a simple life, but you're progressing nicely in Krishna consciousness. And you're being nourished. So you're satisfied, and at the same time you're being spiritually nourished. Tushti pushti. And you're detached from everything material. So those three occur simultaneously. So what I'm saying is that these, it's so wonderful to have like a book like the Chaitanya Charitamrita and other books where you can really see the life of devotees enacted on this high level and be inspired. And also to read about, Prabhupada's life, Prabhupada's biography and the devotees. So you become, say, well, I want to also experience that. I can do it, And then your consciousness gets transformed and you can begin to feel that there's hope in life. Otherwise, materially, there's no hope. I mean, there never was any hope. There's false hope, but in the modern day, there's not even any false hope. Everything looks so bleak. I mean, this is one of the reasons why today there's like an epidemic of, mental illness or anxiety and even suicidal ideation amongst young kids. They measure it; it's increasing because they're perfectly aware that the elders here, they're not doing much about climate change, and if they're really aware, they know that war that's going on in Europe could easily turn nuclear, and we saw the movies, we saw those things, blow up. So how is their future? Future is very bleak. They're feeling that they don't have much hope, and ambition, many of them. And that's what it means, which is tragic.
FOMO is the biggest issue of anxiety.
Fear of missing out. Yeah. And it doesn't just mean missing out on some movie or something. It means missing out on a meaningful life. So, but Krishna consciousness, it means there's great hope. The great hope because, first of all, hey, every body dies, and nobody dies. Wake up and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. So that's why the first lesson is such an important lesson. Because it should change, it must change your whole perspective on what's important to strive for. It's not just the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years that I'm going to have to plan out. It's eternity. It's very hopeful because you won't die, but you don't want to be in a position where it's like a long period of suffering. So therefore, it should change your whole perspective on what to strive for, and ultimately what to strive for is eternal life, spiritual life in the spiritual world. And Krishna is encouraging us, if you can just take the knowledge I've just taught you in this 13th chapter, which is coming to a close, and see the super soul everywhere, then you'll go back to the Param Gatim. But that means that you have to give up the desire to steal and appropriate and enjoy the super soul's property. Everything belongs to Krishna. This is Ishabhashimidam Sarvam. That means that our real happiness lies in learning how to use everything in Krishna's service. If everything belongs to him, then it should be used in his service. Right? So that's the big thing. That's going from false ego to real ego. So, but that's what's available in this process. Thank you for listening. Hare Krishna. You're always welcome. So anyway, these are some of the thoughts on this verse. I kind of maybe got a little far afield, but hey, it's a big field. If there are no questions, comments, we will proceed to text 30. Yes? Okay, sure.
How do we see the super soul equally within every person, but then at the same time when we're in society, associate with people according to their bodily designations?
Yeah, well, that's not easy. I mean, the thing is, you have to kind of steep yourself in the Bhagavad Gita and practice. Like for instance, you see, I see when I go for my walk, a lot of people walking their dogs. Okay. So if I'm Krishna conscious, I'm thinking, it's kind of a sad situation, in one sense. You know, they don't look sad, but it's sad that they've developed an attachment with this dog, and the dog is doing okay. You know, he's got a home. He or she's got a home, and you know, the master. But the poor human being is likely going to get a more degraded body in the next life. In other words, because they got attached to a dog. Yeah.
Conditioning is like that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea is that you develop attachments with as you associate, you know, and there's a reason for it, because the dog depends on you, loves you. There's something coming back, you know, and so it's filling a need, you know, to have the dog, and but unfortunately that attachment. Don't forget, that's what forms the template of our next body, is the number of attachments we have. And so you can see that. I mean, it's just everywhere you go, you can see, you know, the living entities in the human form are complex and so forth, but they are clearly immersed in their material forest of you know, consciousness.
Yeah, ESA certificates now for these dogs.
What is it?
Because a lot of landlords, they don't allow dogs in the apartments.
Oh.
So all these people have ESA, emotional support.
Oh, it's emotional support animals. Yes. Well, that's good. We just have the beads as emotional support. Oh, Krishna. All right, let's try to do one more. Prakritjaiva karmani kriyamanani sarvashaha yak pashyati tatatmanam akartaram sapashyati. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Purport. This body is made by material nature under the direction of the Supersoul. And whatever activities are going on in respect to one's body are not his doing. Whatever one is supposed to do, either for happiness or for distress, one is forced to do because of the bodily constitution. The self, however, is outside all these bodily activities. This body is given according to one's past desires. To fulfill desires, one is given the body, with which he acts accordingly. Practically speaking, the body is a machine designed by the Supreme Lord to fulfill desires. Because of desires, one is put into difficult circumstances to suffer or to enjoy. This transcendental vision of the living entity, when developed, makes one separate from bodily activities. One who has such a vision is an actual seer. So this came up before in the fifth chapter. You'll find that also, that whether eating or opening one's eyes, closing one's eyes, you remember there's a verse like that? One sees that he's actually doing nothing at all. He, the soul, is simply observing. That's the whole idea at the beginning of this chapter, Kshetragya. We know, but ultimately we're not doing anything. What are we doing then? We're desiring. We're desiring to do something. I desire to have some water, right? So what's going on? That desire, I don't constantly say, okay, now muscle, now contract, and nerve, no, I don't do any of that. All I do is desire. The super soul gets the desire, and under the super soul, the whole machine is working. With the cooperation of all the demigods, they're also involved, right? Even the blinking of the eyes is a demigod involved. And so, okay, so they understand, okay, everything is okay, he deserves to get some water, you know. So it's going on, I'm getting this, you know, and this is how we live. I mean, we don't know what's going on in the body, the complex machine that's happening, how it's being regulated, you know. Just the idea of keeping it at that 98.6, you can imagine, you know, it's so complicated. So, but the all-important point is to desire correctly. And in the conditioned state, the desires are all in terms of pleasing the body, pleasing the mind, and avoiding pain. You know, that's the basic bottom line. And that's the material life. And as the culture that you're born into and the things that are presented to you to get pleasure, it can be in goodness or passion or ignorance. And you can become easily degraded because you have no knowledge, you see. So the knowledge of what to do and what not to do, and the facility to do and not do what you're supposed to do is a great treasure that you come in touch with only when Prabhupada came and made it available all over the world. Otherwise, it's there in India, and many, whatever, can get it. But it was hidden outside. But now, this is available, and it's, again, the knowledge is there. Prabhupada was so eager following a spiritual master to print books. And these books are the foundation in so many languages, and it's still going on. That's what we're studying. So understanding that one is riding in this machine in the body, and that we have certain options to act in a certain way or to refrain, and then how we can do it for our ultimate good and to actually act that way. Chant the holy name and then bring the mind back. So you're hearing Hare Krishna, making the effort. Then you're going to get the reciprocation from the Lord in the heart. Krishna is there. Shinvatam Sakata Krishna Punya Shabana Kirtana. When he understands you're hearing about him, then he cleanses away the abhadras. This is Cheto Darpana Marjanam. The whole process, there's a book called what is it called? Bhajan Rahasya. Is that Bhajan Rahasya? It's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation of a whole science of bhakti based on the Shikshastika. I just finished reading it. It's really fascinating. But it all starts, and even that first verse presents a whole, if you know how to interpret it as he does, a whole progression from beginning to complete realization, at the end. So anyway, we've been given the process, we've been given the facility to do it, and the knowledge in Prabhupada's precious books. And here, you can see that we're not doing anything but desiring. So therefore, let us cultivate those desires which are most wholesome, which will be most beneficial for us. And that's the desire to serve Krishna at every moment. All right, let's see. We will pick up there at text 31 on Monday, but I've left a little time for another poem or two. So this is so there's some people here, new people. So this they haven't heard. You've heard this one, but this is a wonderful verse. I discovered it when I was working on the Ancha Leela 49 years ago. So the verse goes like this. Haridas Thakur chants the verse. It's describing how the holy name is so potent that even chanting once will give you liberation if you chant purely. So the verse is one of these great verses in the Prajavali. Ang hak sang hadadakilang sakadodiyade vasakalalokasya tadaniti batamala jaladin jayachitagan mangalang hare nama. So he explained that verse, and this little poem is based on his explanation in the verse itself. So you have to go back 500 years, there's no electricity, no electric lights. When the sun goes down, it gets dark, especially if there's no moon. When the moon is invisible, withered to nil, and the sun is long gone from the sky, then an ocean of darkness envelops this world, and the timorous fear they might die. But that thick pall of gloom is at once swept away when the first signs of sunrise appear. And the dawning of day gives assurance to all that in truth there is nothing to fear. In a similar way, when illusion holds sway, and the soul has forgotten his Lord, then the darkness of ignorance covers his heart. Sin and suffering are his reward. But as soon as he says Krishna's name even once, in a manner that doesn't offend, then his ignorance flees like the darkness at dawn, and his sin and his suffering end. So there's nothing to fear, for the sun of the name has appeared with his powers divine. In your heart may that sun, benedictive for all, become fixed and eternally shine. Hare Krishna. On that note, let us adjourn and chant Hare Krishna before the deities. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.